The circle. In this video, we will define a circle, look at the characteristics of a circle, and investigate how to measure the length of its perimeter. Okay, so let's talk about the circle. Now, I know you all know what a circle is, but what we're going to do is we're going to define it in terms of maths. So a circle in maths is a set of points which are all the same distance from a center point. So here I have my center point, and I'm going to look at all the points that are the same distance from that center point. So I've chosen my distance here, and let's look at all the points that are that distance away from the center. Can you see what happens when you look at all those points? What are we making? We're making a circle. So that's how we define a circle in maths. Now, how we define this length that we let all of the points on the circle be from the center is we call that the radius. Okay? So the radius in this question here, the distance from any point on the circle to the center, is length 5, where we can see the 5 here is most easy when it's horizontal or vertical because we're on a graph. So you see here, let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units in length. Over here, you can see it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units in length. Up here, it's vertically, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units in length. So it's actually 5 units in length the whole way around. Now, what we do is for the radius, we generally call it by the variable a small r. Okay, so we would say that r equals 5. Now, the next thing we're going to define is a chord. A chord is the name given to a line that connects any 2 points of the circle. So here I've got 2 points on my circle. Here's my first point, and here's my second point. And if you connect any 2 points on the circle, it makes a chord. So that line segment there is a chord. Okay. Now, we have one very special chord, and it's called the diameter. It's special because it's a chord that must go through the center. Okay? Okay, so that is what defines a diameter. It's a chord that goes through the center. It's also the longest chord in the circle. Now, what's very important about the diameter is that it's actually twice the radius in length. So can you see here we've called the diameter small d, and it's twice the radius in length. So let's look at that. Here's my radius. So from the center out to the left, you can see that my radius is 5 units long. And if we look at my diameter from the center to the right, it's also 5 units long. So can you see the way there the diameter is the same as 2 radiuses? Or actually, the plural of radius is radii. So the diameter is the same length as 2 radii. Now my radius here is 5 units in length, which means my diameter is going to be 10 units in length. Okay. Now the last thing that we need to define is then the circumference. The circumference is the length of the perimeter of the circle. So perimeter is all of the outside edge of the circle. So imagine if you were walking around a circular garden. Okay, and we start walking and we measure the distance that we walk around the whole garden. Well, that length or that distance is the circumference. Okay, so it is the length of the perimeter is the circumference. And actually, the length of the circumference in a circle is roughly 3 times the length of the diameter. So can you see that here? The length of the circumference of my circle is roughly, that's the little squiggly equals, roughly 3 multiplied by d, 3 times the length of the diameter. Now the diameter in this question is length 10, so 3 times 10 is 30. So the full length of my circumference should be roughly 30. In actual fact, The length, if we did it using our proper maths and very accurately, the length is 31.4. Okay, so just a little over the 30. Okay, now we are going to do an activity sheet to explore how the circumference of a circle is just over 3 times the diameter. You can download the activity sheet, or the activity sheet has been designed that it can easily be done into your maths copy instead. Okay? So, firstly, we are reminded on this activity sheet that the squares in a maths copy or on an exam paper are 1/2 centimeter wide and 1/2 centimeter high, or you could say 0.5 centimeters wide and 0.5 centimeters high. This is a great help for drawing centimeters, as 2 squares in your maths copy will represent the width of 1 centimeter. Okay, and it will be very helpful for this activity also. So the instructions on this activity sheet are: number 1, using a compass, draw a circle below with diameter equals 7 centimeters. So 7 centimeters will be 14 boxes in width. Okay, and number 2, using a piece of string, show that the circumference of the circle roughly equals 3 times the diameter plus 1/7 of the diameter. So what we need is a compass and a center point to draw a circle. Now the center point is on the sheet, or you just pick a center point in your copy. And then next we need to know the radius, because that's how wide we need to open our compass to draw the circle. Now the instructions say that the circle must have a diameter of 7 centimeters. So therefore the radius will be 1/2 of 7 centimeters, which is 3.5 centimeters. Okay, so we know our radius. Now remember, if one box is 1/2 centimeter wide, then 3.5 centimeter radius will be 7 squares wide. So you open up your compass to 7 squares wide, 3.5 centimeters, put the point on the center of the circle, and then draw your circle. Okay, so now we have our diameter, that is 7 centimeters. Next, what I want you to do is get some string and cut a length that is 22 centimeters long, as shown here. Okay? And remember, 22 centimeters long will be 44 squares in your copy. Now this 22 centimeter length of string, it will represent 3 groups of 7 centimeters, which means that's 3 diameters. Okay? And then the very last little bit is 1 centimeter. So 1 centimeter represents 1 centimeter out of 7 centimeters, which is the diameter, equals 1/7 of the diameter. So there's my 3 diameters and 1/7 of the diameter. So that's how long we've cut our piece of string. Now I want you to wrap this string around the circle that you drew. Okay? And what you should observe is that it is a fairly good fit along the perimeter of the circle. And the perimeter of the circle is what we call the circumference. So our circle has a diameter of 7 centimeters, and we have just wrapped around a piece of string that is 3 groups of 7 centimeters and 1/7 of 7 centimeters. So our conclusion here is that the length of the circumference of our circle is 3 1/7 times the diameter. Okay. Now we are going to investigate this special number 3 1/7 further on our calculator. So first of all, what we're going to do is we're going to put this number in our calculator and turn it into a top-heavy fraction. So currently 3 1/7 is a mixed fraction, and how you put that into your calculator is, can you see your fraction button? Behind it in yellow is the ability to put in a mixed fraction. So you just press Shift and your fraction button, and it gives you the option of putting the whole number in with the fraction. So we're going to put the 3 in, use your arrow to come over into the numerator, and 1/7. Use your arrow to come down into the denominator and type in your 7. Use your arrow to come out of the fraction, okay? And then when you press equals, it gives you the top heavy version of that number. Now 22/7 is a very popular method when you're calculating the circumference, okay? In a lot of questions, they will ask you to use 22/7 in your calculations, okay? So I want you to keep that in mind, and I have it written here. So this is another one of our options, 22/7. Now, in other questions, they actually ask you to use the decimal form. Now, if you take 22/7 now and press your SD button, it will give you the decimal form of that. So you can see that it's 3.142857. So correct two decimal places here would be 3.14. So if you look over here, again, this is a very common option where a question asks you to use 3.14 when calculating your circumference. Okay, now actually this number is so special for all shapes circular that it was given a special name of its own. We call this number pi. Okay, you can see it here in the heading. This is what pi looks like, the name. It's two lines and a line going across the top, and that's the symbol that we use for this number, 3.14 or 3 1/7. Okay, pi. And how we spell it is Pi. Now, this symbol is also on your calculator. So do you see it down here? You see the middle button on the last row. Do you see behind it in yellow you have the little pi symbol there? So if you press shift and this button, what it brings up is the absolute most accurate version of the number that you can use. Okay? So this one that's on the screen presently is a very, very, very good estimate, but it's not super accurate. In fact, if you press SD again, it will make this into the most accurate version. So I'm going to press SD again, and can you see it there? 3.142857143. That's the most accurate version, okay, of the number that we use when you multiply it by the diameter to make the circumference. Okay, so you can get it that way by putting in 3 1/7 or 22/7 and pressing the SD button twice. Or you can get it by using this button down here. So if I press shift and this button, it brings the pi symbol up onto my calculator. Now if you press equals, it will put the pi symbol into your answer area on your calculator, and then if you press SD, it will tell you the most accurate representation of pi, 3.14159264. So in some questions actually they use 3 decimal places, and if you looked here it would be 141, and after the 1 is a 5, which means we would round up to 142. So here, over here on the left, this is the last option. In some questions they say, please use 3.142 to calculate your answers. Okay? So in actual fact, your calculator can't even fit in the whole number pi. It's just giving you the amount of numbers that it can manage to give you on the calculator. Because pi, in its most accurate form, is called an irrational number. So irrational, if you think of something irrational, it's a little bit crazy. So it's an irrational number, which means the decimal keeps changing forever. So this decimal goes on and on and on forever, and it keeps changing forever. So there's no way you could put it all onto a calculator. So if you want to see actually just a part of pi, it looks like this. Do you see the way it keeps going on? And obviously it goes on even more than that. It goes on forever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever and ever, hence being called totally irrational. Okay? But for all of our sums, really, we will get a really good degree of accuracy by just using 3.14 or 3.142 or using, for the most accurate answer, the pi option on the calculator. Okay, so we will now say that the circumference is number pi multiplied by the diameter. We are now going to look at how this formula is represented in the log tables. So first of all, the circumference is represented as a length in the log tables. Okay, so all of the perimeters in the log tables are represented as length, and the circle is no different. Okay, and then the second thing is that in the log tables we represent the diameter as 2 multiplied by r, because the diameter is double the width of a radius. So what you will find in the log tables is L for length equals the number pi multiplied by 2 multiplied by r for the circumference. So here we have pi, which is a number that's not going to change. We have the number 2, which is a number that's not going to change. And we have r, which is a variable. It will change depending on the circle that we're talking about. So when it comes to the formula, when we multiply, we will put the numbers first, then the variables. That's just tradition, and we put them side by side. So numbers first, then variables, and the number 2 is smaller than pi, so we'll put 2 first. So how this is actually going to look in the log tables is L for length equals 2 pi r. So if we look at the log tables then, if you look at page 8 in your log tables, you will see we have the information here for our circle. So the first thing is we have a diagram, and on the diagram it shows that the radius is called r, it's a small r, and the length of the circumference is called L, a small l. Then we have our formula for the length of the circle, which we know is the circumference, so L equals 2 pi r. Now, if you look over on the right hand side, it does specify that the length L is the same thing as the circumference L for our circle. Okay, so what we'll do now is we'll do a wee example. Now, example number 1, find the circumference of the circle below. Take pi equals 3.142 and leave the answer correct to 1 decimal place. So we can see we have a circle here with radius 9 centimeters. So first of all, write out your formula, and always do that because very often you get attempt marks for just writing out your formula. Then we're going to sub in, for pi we're going to sub in 3.142 like they asked in the question, and remember when you're subbing in use brackets, and we're going to sub in 9 for r using brackets. Okay. Now remember then that brackets mean multiply, so this reminds us that what this means is 2 multiplied by 3.142 multiplied by 9. So we can use our calculator for this. So I have 2 multiplied by, so that's brackets 3.142, end bracket, multiplied by 9, so bracket 9 end bracket equals, and I have my answer here as a top-heavy fraction, so press SD to change it into a decimal, and I have 56.556. If we check our question, then we can see what way are we to leave our answer, and we are to leave our answer correct to 1 decimal place. So after 1 decimal place, I have a 5, which means I'll be rounding up. So this 5 will change into a 6, so that will be 56.6. And remember that my units of measurement are centimeters. So the length of the circumference here is 56.6 centimeters. Okay, and here's just a wee reminder of what we put into our calculator. So we just typed it in exactly as you see it and used our SD button to get the decimal answer. Okay, now example 2. Find the circumference of the circle below. This time take pi to be 22/7. Leave answer correct 2 decimal places. So this time we're going to go and find our formula in our log tables. And we can see here then that for the circle, the length or the circumference of the circle is 2 pi r. So write down your formula, and then we have to sub in here. For pi, this time we're putting 22/7 in brackets, and for r we're subbing in 6. Okay, so remember that these brackets mean multiply. So this is 2 multiplied by 22/7 multiplied by 6. So we'll do that on the calculator. So that's 2 bracket, use your fraction button, so that's 22/7, down arrow, 7, use your side arrow to come out, close your bracket. Then use another bracket to multiply by 6, so 6, close bracket, and then press equals. Again, we've been given the answer as a top-heavy fraction, so let's use our SD button to get our decimal answer. So we have 37.714285. Now my question asks to leave the answer correct to 2 decimal places. So to 2 decimal places, that would be 0.71. Check the number after, which is a 4. Now that's less than 5, so we will round down. So we will take our answer to be 37.71. So 37.71 meters is our unit this time, and that is the length of our circumference. Now, example number 3. Find the circumference of the circle below. This time use the pi button on the calculator and leave the answer correct to the nearest whole number. So we can see this time we have a circle and the diameter is 15 kilometers. Now we have to be careful there because our formula uses the radius, not the diameter. So the diameter here is 15 kilometers, so the radius will be 15 divided by 2. Okay? So write down your formula. So go and get your formula from the log tables. And this time we're subbing in nothing for the pi. So we're just going to type pi into the calculator. So the only thing we need to sub in for here is the radius. But remember, the radius will be the diameter divided by 2. Okay? So you can type it in like this straight into your calculator, or if you wish, you'll probably be able to do it in your head that 15 divided by 2 is 7.5. So either way is perfect. So this time I will have 2, and I need to use my pi button now. So that means shift, and this button down here in the middle at the bottom brings up my pi, and then I have to multiply that by 15/2, or 7.5. So brackets 15 divided by 2, down arrow to the to the denominator, 2, side arrow to come out, close brackets, equals, and it gives you the answer 15 pi. Okay, now that answer 15 pi is actually the answer in terms of pi. That's what we call that. If you give the answer as 15 pi, we would say you're given the answer in terms of pi. But we're not finished yet because we have to give our answer correct to the nearest whole number. So what we need to do now is take our 15 pi and press the SD button, and it will change the pi then into the most accurate form of the number. So it's multiplying it by 3.142, etc. And our answer then is 47.1238898. Now check your question. We have to leave this correct to the nearest whole number. So the nearest whole number here is 47, because after the decimal I have a 1, which means I'm going to round down. So my nearest whole number is 47. So press your SD button and we get our answer as the length of the perimeter of this circle is 47 kilometers. Now example number 4. Find the length of the perimeter of the circle below, and this time leave the answer in terms of pi. So the question is actually asking us to just leave the pi in the answer. Don't do anything with it. Okay? So we'll get our formula from our log tables. Okay, so it's L equals 2 pi r. And then all we have to do then here is simply fill in for the radius. We don't need to do anything with the pi. So instead of r, we're going to sub in 10 in brackets. And remember that this means 2 pi multiplied by 10. So we can multiply the 2 by the 10 to get 20. And we just leave the pi in the answer. So the length equals 20 pi centimeters. Okay? And that's the answer.